it's awesome to really challenge yourself of like, how do we serve people so well to understand the what and the why so that we can guide them, whoever's ready, to go to the how. And guess what? If people aren't ready for that next step, they still got a ton of value and they know that that offer is there waiting for them.
I'm Amy Porterfield, ex-corporate girl turned CEO of a multi-seven-figure business. But it wasn't all that long ago that I lacked the confidence, the budget, and the time to focus on growing my small but mighty business. Fast forward past many failed attempts and lessons learned, and you'll see the business I have today. One that changes lives and gives me more freedom than I ever thought possible. One that used to only exist as a daydream. I created the Online Marketing Made Easy podcast to give you simple, actionable, step-by-step strategies to help you do the same. If you're an ambitious entrepreneur or one in the making who's looking to create a business that makes an impact and a life you love, you're in the right place, friend. Let's get started. Welcome to another episode of Online Marketing Made Easy. I am excited that you're here today. Whether you're a loyal listener or tuning in for the very first time, I'm just grateful that you have made the time for this episode because I promise you it will not disappoint. Today's guest is someone I always get excited about having on the podcast. She is an absolute wealth of knowledge in all things online business. I always say she's a powerhouse in the online business world. Now, she's also the host of one of the most top-rated business podcasts, Gold Digger Podcast. So I'm sure you've heard of it and you already know who I'm talking about, my dear friend, Jenna Kutcher. Now, not only is Jenna brilliant at podcasting and she's just a brilliant businesswoman, but what makes her truly special is how down-to-earth, relatable, and transparent she is with everything that she does. She's not just about the numbers and success stories. She's about building a business and a life that feels good to her. So Jenna and I have been friends for many years. And over the last few years, we voice text almost every single day about life and business and everything in between. And I will say that who you see on her podcast and on her lives and on her website, that's who she is behind the scenes as well. And the biggest lesson I have learned from my friend is how to make sure that you create a life first and a business second. Because I think I created my business first. I know I did. And then I decided, okay, how to fit my life into that business. And that's created a lot of challenges and angst over the 15 years of building my business. But over the last few years of being really close friends with Jenna, I've learned to look through a different lens. Jenna has a really sweet life. If you follow her on Instagram, you'll see her at her lake house with her two little kids and her wonderful husband, Drew. And she shares everything about her life. Well, not everything, but she shares a lot about her life and business. And I love that it is so clear that she cares deeply about the time she spends with her loved ones and how she spends her time outside of work. And I think that makes her a better businesswoman because she cares deeply about her personal life and that oozes into her business life because she has a lot of creativity, a lot of energy to focus on it because she takes care of the most important part, her friends, her family, herself. So I just wanted to share that. That has nothing to do with this podcast episode today, but it is something that I really love about Jenna. So today's podcast episode, we are talking about affiliate marketing for your podcast. You could take these lessons and use them wherever you want in your business, but specifically, how can you monetize your podcast while also collecting invaluable data that will help you build a more successful, engaged podcast along the way? So Jenna has made millions with her own podcast by implementing very specific marketing strategies that she's going to share with you today. And I promise you, friend, anyone can do this, whether you're just starting out or you've been at it for a while. You already have opportunities in your world to turn your podcast on for monetization. I promise you. Now, you might be saying, but Amy, I don't have a podcast yet. I've been thinking about it, but I don't. Stay till the end. I'll give you a really great free resource on how to get started with your own podcast. So I hope this episode, for those of you who don't have a podcast yet, but you've thought about it, I hope it piques your interest enough to say, all right, this is the year that I'm going to get my podcast up and running, and I'll give you a free resource at the end to do so. Okay, friends, I won't make you wait any longer. Help me welcome my dear friend, Jenna Kutcher, back to the show. Well, hello, my dear friend. It's so good to see you back on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to have a full conversation, not just in random voice memos throughout the day. This is going to be a masterclass for you, but also for your audience. And it's something that you and I have talked about a lot off air that we are bringing to a full conversation on air today.
And it's a good one. I think we've enticed people with this title. So I'm going to cut right to the chase. What strategy did you use to make over 6 figures this last year with your podcast alone?
And you know what we should add to that is without sponsorships, because I feel like that is the one thing people think about when they think about monetizing a podcast, right? We all listen to big shows where they have tons of different ads and things like that. And you and I have both used ads on our show, but this strategy is totally separate from that. Okay, so let's dive into this.
I'm glad you made that clear because this is very different. So yeah, break it down.
Okay, so I have used my podcast in so many different ways to monetize over the years, and you have done the same as well. And I think that a lot of times when people think about monetizing, they first think about sponsorships, but there's a lot of different opportunities for people to monetize a podcast. And I stumbled upon this strategy a little over a year ago. So here's kind of the lay of the land, and then we can kind of break things down a little bit. So I recognize that so many of my guests that were coming onto my show had amazing products and had amazing resources for my audience, right? That's why they're coming on my show in the first place. And one of my guests had said to me, hey, do you want an affiliate link just to see what your audience does? And I was like, wait a minute. I had never even really thought about that. We had used my podcast to fuel different affiliate launches, but I never thought about using it for like one specific episode or to gain insight. And I started to really think about this in a twofold way because I'm going to be doing the podcast interview regardless of if I get an affiliate link or not. About 80% of my shows do not have affiliate links. But when this guest offered, I was like, they are also offering me super valuable data to see what my audience does after they listen to the episode. And they're offering me commission. And I'd be kind of a fool to say no to that.
Right.
And so we started to play around with this idea of what if like once a month or every other month, we had a specific episode on our show where we knew we'd get an affiliate link for the offer. The offer was aligned with what our audience wanted, and we'd put a little bit more fire behind that episode to see what would happen. And it was absolutely insane. We generated nearly $200,000 in 1 year just through this strategy, not counting big launches like you and I do for Digital Course Academy or things like that. So I'm talking about straight up podcast episode to offer. And so it was just this awesome strategy that we started really simply, and we started to create a framework around what would this look like. And this was a huge way that my podcast generated revenue in the last year.
Okay, so this is exciting. I want you to tell me first, how do you decide which business owners or which brands to feature in your affiliate campaigns with your podcast?
Okay, so I love this question. And honestly, it's pretty easy in the sense of who are you most aligned with? Like, who do you want to partner up with and support? Whose business do you want to help grow? And also, who has an offer that your audience would be really interested in? And it is so easy for me to find people like that because I don't want to create everything, right? I am not an expert in everything. So we have teamed up with so many different experts. We teamed up with our friend Susie Moore, who teaches how to get featured. I know she's been on your show. We teamed up with Ashlyn Carter, who's an incredible copywriter who writes copy for me. We've teamed up with so many different creators who I have hired and ultimately paid a lot of money to learn from. And I have figured if I find this person super valuable, there's a really good chance that my audience is going to find them valuable. And so, to be honest, there are so many different creators out there that we want to do this strategy with, but we have just decided to really limit how we're doing it because what I want to do is instead of going wide with having a million different offers, I want to go deep with the right offers.
So true. So when you say offers, I know the answer to this because I watch what you do, but Can you give some examples of these campaigns that you've put together so people really understand what it is that you're choosing?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I know you just said Ashlyn and Susie,
Yeah.
but maybe a little bit deeper into like these are digital courses, right? Do you promote other things than digital courses?
Yeah, so most of them are digital courses. And so when we partner up with someone, what we found is like my audience is very used to our traditional model, the model that you and I both follow, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of times we will point to the next free resource. So the podcast episode is by no means a sales pitch. It is more so the invitation to take the next step. And the next step is a logical one, right? Like you just got a ton of free information from a podcast, and if you want to learn more or learn how to apply it on a whole new level, then head to the free webinar. And so that's my favorite method because my audience is very familiar with it. But I also think it's just so powerful to put this person in the position to continue serving, right? Serving before you ever go to sell. We've also done it though with a company who sold journals. We did it with someone who had a blueprint where you could learn more about yourself. And so we've tested out different models, but the one that has worked best for us is the one that our audience is most used to following. And so if you're listening to this and you have a specific way that you share about or you sell your offers, finding a similar way to guide your audience on a similar path is likely going to be the most effective way to leverage this specific strategy. And so for me, it is podcast episode to free webinar to offer, and that's worked the best for us.
Same with us. Definitely 100% agree. And I love a few of these factors that you mentioned. Number one, you're going to choose an offer that you do not want to create yourself.
Yeah.
Whether it be how to get more PR, how to be a great copywriter. These are things that you are not teaching in your business, but they complement your business.
Correct.
Also, I know some people listening, you use a certain software, like you use it in your business. It's you live and die by this software. Having someone from that team come on your show and talk about why the software works, the benefits, the features, all of that, and using an affiliate link to the software, that's another thing that you can do because you're looking for total alignment, right? Real fast, because I want to talk about metrics, like what tracking methods or systems do you use to monitor performance? But before you answer that question, when you and I were chatting off camera, you had mentioned that you don't have to always be looking to make money with this method. You can use it just to collect data. And so I think this tracking method and the systems you use could be used to make some great commission, but also learn more about your audience.
Yes. Okay. So I think this is so valuable because I think a lot of times if we lead with the money, people, their curiosity is piqued, right? Like, well, how can I make money with something? But what I actually think is incredibly valuable and under leveraged in businesses is data. And you and I actually talk about data all the time. And I think what's been so interesting about this is in the past, for 700 plus episodes of the Gold Digger podcast, I never used this strategy. And so I had zero idea what was happening after somebody listened to an episode, right? I had no clue if it really resonated. We don't get a lot of feedback like you do on social media, where immediately you know if something lands or makes sense or is exciting. With podcasting, it kind of feels like you're shouting out into the ether a lot. And so for 700 plus episodes, I had no idea what was happening after. I would have guests say, oh my gosh, my business is exploding, or I've gotten so many inquiries, or my following increased, and all these wonderful things. But I didn't actually know when it came to buyer behavior, what was happening. Were people actually interested enough to take that next step? And so one of the most interesting things, and something I would challenge any of you if you're doing any sort of collaboration or partnership, is to use an affiliate link not just to collect money, but to gain the insight into what your audience truly wants and what they're willing to spend their precious time, money, or energy on. I feel like that in and of itself is so invaluable. Not only can you create more content aligned with that, you can figure out what it is that they're needing, what phase of their business or life or journey they're in that you could help complement even further. I just think data is so under leveraged, and it's something that we don't look at enough. And it's something that I totally missed for years and years and years.
Same. I mean, it answers the question, what does your audience want more of? And so we need to be looking into that. So that's just an extra reason why you should be using affiliate links if they are available to you.
Yeah.
And I want everyone to hear this. Don't be shy to ask. I recently had a guy, actually, let me tell you what happened. I had a guy come on my show and he was teaching how to create digital offers, but not digital courses like templates, blueprints, things you can sell on Etsy or Shopify. And it's so different than what I do. So I thought, I'm going to bring him on. So I bring him on. His name is Cody Berman. And it was a great episode. But I stopped the episode right in the middle. And I said, hold on, Cody, do you have an affiliate link? Because what you're doing is so good. And this interview is going so well. I know my audience is going to eat this up. And I would love to track, number one, if they do. And number two, I'd love to get a commission if you have an affiliate program. And he's like, do I ever? Like, people love when you ask them if they have an affiliate program, if they do. And so he had one. I thought of a link real fast that wasn't even set up yet. I continued the episode. And at the very end, I said, okay, where should they go to learn more about this? And so I think it's really important to know you have to go after it. Don't wait for them to tell you, hey, do you want an affiliate link? Choose people on your podcast that you would love to partner with and collab with around this. So, okay, so that was just a quick story of it recently worked really well for me. And it creates a really great connection with you and the podcast guest because they feel really grateful that you're doing that. It's a big deal for them as well. Okay, so you recently made $60,000 from one podcast episode and one email. You send an email after the podcast. So one podcast episode and an email, $60,000. So my question is, why do you think podcasts are so effective in driving affiliate sales even without a lot of promotion?
Yeah. So what's crazy about this one campaign is that this was over a year ago and we're still generating money from it. So here's a few reasons. So first, a podcast is long form content. And you and I both understand what that means. But for somebody listening who is spending so much time and energy creating content on social media that essentially lives and dies within 3 to 5 hours, 24 hours if you're lucky, people aren't necessarily scrolling back on your Instagram 3 months ago to find a post where you shared just a tiny bit of information. But when it comes to podcasts, and I'm sure the same goes for you, Amy, but about 50% of my downloads every month are my backlog, meaning people are going back to old episodes, whether they're searching specific keywords, catching up on episodes they might have missed, re-listening to an old episode. And so essentially, when you're building a podcast, you're building out this incredible resource library that is literally going to be serving people for weeks, months, and years to come. I cannot tell you, my show came out in 2016. People are still listening to episode number 1 today. Like, as this episode airs.
Kind of mortifying.
I am mortified too. I sound like a valley girl in that episode. I mean, it is wild to see how far we've come. And so what I think is awesome is that with a podcast, you have this long form content. But when I also think about podcasting as fuel for a collaboration like this, you get to give so much value. Amy, I just told this story about how the day I decided to start my own podcast, it was inspired by you. You didn't even know I existed. I was like your number one fan. You were my mentor. You were my coach. You were like everything to me. And I was in the shower listening to an episode and you were talking about an offer that you hadn't even finished creating yet. And I found myself thinking, if I could reach out of my shower and grab my credit card and hand it to Amy Porterfield, I would, because you had delivered so much free value. And that is truly why this is an effective strategy, is because on a podcast episode, you can serve so much value. You can get people results for free. You can help them understand something new. You can literally help them to take action and to see the reward before the sun even sets in a day. And so I just think that with podcasts being long form content and giving you the ability to serve, it is natural that people that connect with that messaging want to take the next step, right? Like they're like chomping at the bit for like, where do I go from here? And so it is such a natural progression that not only serves you as the podcast releases, but also has the ability to serve you for months and years to come. And that is exactly what we're seeing. One campaign that aired in August of 2023, we are continuing to generate thousands of dollars every single month from one episode of the podcast that we haven't even promoted, put paid ads behind, nothing since it aired. And I just think that's amazing.
Wild. It's so freaking good. And it reminded me when you were talking about adding value, I think podcasts also increase trust with your audience, like at a really high level. Because like you said, you've done hundreds and hundreds of podcast episodes. You're in people's ears. I'm sure, Jenny, you've had the experience where someone meets you in real life and they feel as though they are your best friend because they hear from you every week.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
It's like the best. So this trust factor, as well as offering so much value. I always say earn the right to sell, like a webinar. To me, for 45 minutes, you're earning the right to sell at the end because you're giving immense value. Kind of the same feeling with a podcast as well. And the great thing that you already mentioned is you don't need to do this with every single episode. We don't even suggest that you do, but I love to do it at least once a month or once every 6 episodes because I batch in 6. So this is a strategy that really Jenna encouraged me to start doing more of. So glad I have. But as you were talking, Jenna, it made me think, has there ever been any campaigns that really surprised you? Like either they did way better than you thought or they kind of tanked and didn't do as well as you had hoped?
Yeah, absolutely. There was one really interesting one that like I personally was like wildly excited about.
Yeah.
And it was just like the offer was this guide to learn more about yourself. And I just like nerd out about like all the different ways of like, give me all the quizzes. I want to know which friend's character I'm like. I want to know why I am the way I am. Anyways, I was like personally just like so hyped up about this guide. And it still performed, but it definitely didn't. I thought it was going to like explode and it didn't. And it was interesting because again, we gained so much insight. And I look at everything in my business as an experiment. I am like, this is not a success or a failure. This is just like information to guide me forward. And so it's like, maybe my audience isn't ready for that yet. Maybe it didn't resonate right. Like, and it was one of those things too, where my team, we were like so dead set on like, no, we know we can make this work. And I was like, okay, maybe the info is like the gift that we got in this one so that we can move on to something more. And so what's interesting about this strategy too is that you can repeat it. So it's repeatable. And I think for a lot of people that gives you like a little exhale of like, if you're thinking about teaming up with like 5 different people in the next year, that might feel really intimidating. But like we have had a few different partners where we partner with them now once a year, where we're like, this did so well, it resonated, it worked. How do we figure this out in a different angle? And so it's really awesome because it really builds incredible relationships with other creators. And it allows you to share your audience with people that you believe in. Like, I love putting gasoline on the fire of my friends. Like that is like such a joy. And so I just think it's such a cool way to do it. But yes, that one campaign, I was like, And then we've had a few outliers that like crushed it. Like Ashlyn Carter's copywriting for creatives course, like crushed it. And this woman was coming out of maternity leave and she was like, you gave me the confidence to come out and do a launch like this. Like I wanted to do it right because you were by my side. And that was just like an awesome thing and such an awesome resource. And when you really think about it, it's like my audience gets to learn from someone who has literally been in my business for years, for almost a decade. And so it's so valuable.
Okay, I 100% agree. I love that you talked about if one of the offers doesn't work, that is still data that will help you figure out your next offer. Not all of the offers we do always work. And so you've got to give yourself a little grace. Speaking of an offer that didn't work, where do you think people tend to get it wrong about affiliates on their podcast?
Yeah. So one thing that I think people get wrong with any affiliate is that they forget the serving part, right? They get straight to the selling. They have the link. They just want to sell. And I think that that is the biggest mistake that you can make. And so a lot of times, if we know that we're going to do some sort of affiliate campaign with someone, we really want to focus the episode on the what and the why. Like, what is this topic and why is it so important? Why does it relate to you? Why is this going to impact you and your goals? And then we make sure that the call to action answers the how, right? That takes people to the next logical step of like, well, how do I do this? Or how does this work? Or how do I implement these things that I learned in this episode? And so it takes just a tiny bit more of thought and strategy. And again, when you think about podcasting, you're going to do the interview regardless of if you have a link or not. So you might as well put 10 more minutes of thought into how to set this up really well. But again, it is just figuring out, how do you serve before you sell? And I've listened to some podcast episodes and I can tell that either they're being paid to be on that podcast or the host is being paid to say things, and it doesn't feel right. And I like the affiliate model because if I don't do a good job hosting it, we're not going to do a good job collectively. And it's a very different feel. And so it's awesome to really challenge yourself of like, how do we serve people so well to understand the what and the why so that we can guide them, whoever's ready, to go to the how. And guess what? If people aren't ready for that next step, they still got a ton of value and they know that that offer is there waiting for them.
Absolutely. Well, you were talking, I had this thought that if people were to do this more, what does it allow them in their business? And I was thinking, well, number one, sometimes it can close the gaps of maybe you did a launch, you didn't quite hit that goal. Something like this can kind of pad those gaps or fill them so that you don't have to worry about doing another launch, which leads me to the next point that let's say you plan to do 2 live launches next year. Then if you also do some of these affiliate offers, that means that you're not creating a bunch of new offers next year and driving yourself crazy. Jenna, you know I'm all about less offers, do them better. And so doing something like this allows me to keep my offers really tight and just a few, but I'm making extra revenue on other people's programs easily on my podcast.
Yes.
Now, it goes without saying that you and I have pretty big podcasts, so we're going to make some really great money if we do this right. But even if you're starting out, Jenna, I wish this was something I started 10 years ago so that I could ease into it and get really good. And as my podcast got bigger and better, I knew how to offer value while offering a new offer on the podcast as well. So no matter if you're just starting out, you've been at it for a while, no matter where you are in your journey, you can do this. Which leads me to my final question about affiliate marketing with podcasting. If someone's listening and they're brand new to this, they've never even worked with affiliates, like what's a first step they should take toward implementing an affiliate marketing strategy?
Yeah, so I would say get super familiar with the offer. So we will never promote something that we have not been influenced by, whether it's the actual program or the creator of the program. Like I will not partner with someone that I do not fully trust to take care of my people. And so like we have like taken programs before the episodes, like just to like go through the process and be able to speak to it. And I will say that my most effective campaigns are ones where I have directly either hired that person and paid them in my own business or gotten results based off of something that they have done for me, where I can speak from a very personal place and give kind of my 2 cents on why this works. And so I would say, like, whether it is, you promoting a meal delivery service or you promoting a paid course, you want to have that experience so that you can speak to it. I would also say that you want to look for things that are more evergreen. I know Amy talks about evergreen, but campaigns that do not have a start and an end date, because especially with podcasting, as we spoke about, the backlog and people listening to old episodes is so huge and valuable that you want to make sure that whatever you're pointing people to is hopefully something that is ongoing. Therefore, you can continue to collect commissions long after you hit publish. And then lastly, I would say that you just want to look for somebody who's a good partner. I feel like if they are motivated by you partnering with them, they're going to do a better job on their delivery and on the back end to try to get you results. And I think that that can be really huge as well. One story that I want to share about this that doesn't have to do with digital courses, if somebody's listening, is, can I tell the story about how I accidentally got us free groceries for a year?
Yes, please do.
Okay. So when I first started my podcast, this is one of the things that I totally got wrong. And this is why I teach about podcasting, because I'm like, please avoid the mistakes I made. Is when I first started my podcast, I had a small following. I think I had around 10,000 followers. I was a wedding photographer. I did not teach digital courses. I had not even entered this space. So let's set the stage correctly. And I worked with a company called Honeybook that I still use and love. And they were like a big creator supporter. And I was like, hey, I'm launching this show. If I talk about you in every single episode, will you just help me cover the cost of editing? Because I knew editing wasn't something I personally wanted to take on. And so they said yes. And so the first 100 episodes of the podcast talks about Honeybook.
Okay.
And that was smart-ish. But I would have been so much smarter to use an affiliate code, because if even one person signed up for HoneyBook in any episode, I would get the same amount of money that I was getting as a flat rate, right? And then I had the opportunity to grow it. I learned 2020, but I had this random idea, because the greatest fight of all time in the Kutcher household is every night around mealtime when my husband says, "What's for dinner?" And he actually does the majority of the cooking, but usually that question still comes to me. And it's like, I'm tired. I've made too many decisions. My ADHD brain goes into a million directions. And so years and years and years ago, we started getting HelloFresh. And I noticed on their website, it had this little button, and it was like, share your link with your family and friends and they'll save $40 and you'll get $40. And I was like, oh, that's cool. It's like, I wonder if this would work if I talked about it on my podcast. And so in one of my episodes, I was sharing just about things in my life that made my life easier. And I was like, you guys, like, when Drew asked me that question, like, the daggers coming out of my eyeballs are like so real that he needs to like dodge. And I started talking about HelloFresh. And so I literally dropped the link for our friends and family link. And I did it a few different times throughout my podcast. We literally ate dinner for free for over a year. And this is when my show was small. So I wanted to give this illustration of like, yeah, you can make $60,000 or you could literally feed your family. And I would argue that both are crazy valuable. And so I want for you to see the possibility in this strategy, because my podcast is a business podcast. It is not a family podcast or a meal planning podcast. Yet that offer resonated because it had solved a problem for me. And so as you are listening to this, I want for you to imagine, because I believe that there's a stat that 80 to 90% of companies now have affiliate programs. So it could be as simple as your laundry detergent or your shampoo or anything that you want to talk about on your show. And it could be as complex as having a guest on and talking about their offer, or as simplified as you saying, hey, this show is brought to you by the meal delivery service that helps me and my husband stay in marital bliss. What's awesome is that you get to share those links, you get to collect that data and insight, and those links get to work for you long after you hit publish. And so this strategy can be as big as you want it or as small as you want it, but whatever you're doing, you know that you're recording episodes with intention that will drive results for you for weeks, months, and even years to come.
Amen to that. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. So there's some people listening right now, Jenna, they're like, this sounds really good. I'm kind of excited to try this out, but I do not have a podcast. So because I only teach what I do, I thought it would be cool if we extended this episode with something really cool, like a free offer to learn how to start your podcast. And so anyone listening that's like, okay, this is my year. I'm starting a podcast. I'm figuring this out. Learn from the best of the best. And that is my friend Jenna. So Jenna, tell them about your free masterclass that you have.
Yes. Okay. So it is brand new. Everything I'm teaching is brand new, like up to date, what we are doing, strategies 2024. And I have this awesome masterclass called Podcasting 101, how to start, record, and profit from your show. And we talk about some of the things we spoke about on this show, but we talk about the decisions you need to make at the very beginning, the same decisions that literally paralyzed me, that threatened to not even get me to hit record. We talk about what do you actually need to record a podcast and how to make it super simple for you. And then we talk about different monetization strategies so that you can strategically set yourself up to make money from your show from day one. It is an awesome training. I do a Q&A at the end. I think it is just so timely if you are someone who is imagining kicking off the new year and you saying, welcome to whatever your show is going to be called. This is for you. You do not want to miss it.
Okay, it's amyporterfield.com/start my podcast. amyporterfield.com/start my podcast. And I have to say, Jenna, would you agree with me? My belief to my core is that my podcast is one of the most important assets that I have that have grown my business to where it is today. Would you say that about your podcast?
1000%. Amy, when I was writing my book, I remember my publisher saying it has to say host of the Gold Digger podcast on your cover. And that was when it hit me that this is the thing I am known for. This thing that literally started in the front seat of my parked car in my garage with iPhone headphones is now the thing that I am most recognized for. And I feel like it is the foundation of how you show up and serve the world, but also the foundation of how you can create a legacy. Real quick before we sign off, because I know we're ending, I often think about how cool it is that my daughters someday can listen to these episodes and hear about how their mom started this business with a $300 camera, how her mom navigated loss, how their mom figured out how to be a present mom while running a company. I think about like the fact that our podcasts are our voices and our stories. I think the world is hungry for more stories. And I think your audience is filled with humans that have incredible life-changing stories and the voices to rise up and change the world. So I'm here.
Amen to that. I teach my students that everyone should have an original content platform, whether it be a podcast, a blog, or a video show. And secretly, what I really want to say is it should be a podcast.
Same.
And the reason for that is, number one, you don't have to do video with a podcast. You could turn your camera on or off, whatever you want. But at the end of the day, it is the audio that the majority of people are listening to. And so to me, I love that feature. Number two, I love that we just get to chat and we just get to yap away and it's so fun. And I don't have to worry about editing videos or getting all the subscribers on YouTube. I think it's just easier. And also, I think podcasting is literally a way of life now. I don't know anyone who, if you say, what are your top 5 podcasts, they could rattle it off on all different ages, all different walks of life. So I secretly think a podcast is essential in most people's businesses, which is why I wanted you to come on and talk about this really cool strategy of affiliate marketing on a podcast. And those listening that do not have one, let's get you started. This could be the start of something incredible in your business. So amyporterfield.com/start my podcast. Jenna, I love you to the moon and back. Thank you so much for being on the show and sharing all this value with us.
Aw, thanks for having me. I'm sure I'll see you in my text inbox very soon.
In 5 minutes. Take care, my friend. And there you have it. Another incredible conversation with the one and only Jenna Kutcher. Now, again, if you've been thinking about starting a podcast and you would love to monetize it from the get-go, then I really encourage you to check out Jenna's masterclass, totally free, and it will absolutely help you get started with podcasting. Because here's the thing, I don't want you just to be inspired by this episode, but not take action. Taking action is the most important thing. And Jenna has perfected her podcast strategies, from affiliate strategies to actually how to record, how to edit, how to get your podcast out into the world. And remember what I said in the intro, she knows how to create a business that has a lot of ease, a lot of flexibility. So you can bet that whatever she teaches you in this free podcasting masterclass, it's not going to cost a lot of money for you to get started. It definitely will not take a lot of energy or advanced strategies to get started either. She's going to teach you in a way that you literally can get started right away. So it's all about podcasting 101. It's a free masterclass. I want you to check it out at amyporterfield.com/start my podcast. All right. So there you have it. I cannot wait to see you next week for more entrepreneurial goodness. Until then, I hope you have an incredible week. Bye for now.